Hi, welcome back to Battle with Allah. My name is Mujala Olua and I'm super thrilled to have you here once again on the channel. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't and always check the description box down below to see our offerings. This video is just for me to reflect on briefly on my visit to Kirikiri the other day and just to explain the categories of people that you find in prison. So I went to Kirikiri on a prison outreach visit with a group. It was my first time going with them. They had been going to other outreaches. So but after we came out of the prison, one woman was asking me she was asking different questions, basically just self-reflecting aloud. So because she was next to me, I told her, ask me those questions. Because she was like, oh, there are so many questions that she asks and that she needs answers to. So I was like, ask me those questions, let me see if I can answer. So she asked some questions and I was able to answer some of them based on my own experience, and that's why I thought to do this video. And in this video, we just want to look at who are those people that you would find in a prison, or if you are one of those people who think that everyone that goes to prison deserves it or are there for their crime. Conversely, if you're one of those people who think that people that end up in prison don't deserve it, they were lied against, they were victimized, this video is certainly for you, because a number of the women that I went with were quite emotional, which is expected because we had gone to the female prison and there were just so many ladies in there, young ladies, for the most part. And, they were of the opinion that, maybe some of them don't even have no guilt, I've done nothing, maybe someone just put them there for no reason. So they were quite emotional. Some of them even cried, the women that I went with. So let me explain to you the types of persons that will be found, the types of persons found in Nigerian prison. And I'm telling you this as someone that has been going for prison visits, prison outreaches since as far back as 2013 or 14, most likely. Between those years, that was the first time I went, and I was going consistently until around 2016 when I stopped. And then in 2018, so I remember we used to visit Agodi prison, the one that's at Agodi in Ibadan. Then when I went to Kano, I visited the prison in Kano. I can't place the name or the location of that prison, but it was in Kano. And then I visited this Kirikiri prison in Lagos. So there are different sets of people that you find in custody, and of course, as an ex-prosecutor. Woo! Matter of fact, let me tell you a quick joke. So when the pastor, that went with our group, our pastor, when he was praying, actually, not after, was it after preaching or before? I think it was before, but whatever the case, it was praying for the prisoners that the next time they appear in court, God will defend them. God will show up for them and defend them. And, they all shouted amen. Of course, I said amen too. But I noticed that I had like a very brief, swift pause before saying the amen. And it was because I was thinking, oh, if God's going to defend them, who is he going to defend them against? So, I used to be a prosecutor. So if I was to say amen to that prayer as a prosecutor, that means God is defending them against me, the state. Because, as a prosecutor, my paramount interest is to get the victim of the crime redressed justice. And usually the victim of the crime, that's the nominal complainant, is my primary witness. So that kind of prayer, this is just a joke. It's not too serious. So that prayer was essentially saying that God will show up and fight the prosecutor. Of course, if it's a wrong charge, or if it's victimization going on, or a wrongfully imprisoned person, God should definitely fight and throw the case out of court and get the defendant out by all means. But I noticed that I had that brief pause. Then I said amen, that I'm no longer a prosecutor. I'm now defense counsel. I'm now on the outside. So yes, God will fight for us, fight for my clients, wherever they may be. So that's just on the joking side. To be serious, there are different kinds of people that you find in jail. Some there rightfully, some there wrongfully, some without justification, really. So let's go over them one after the other. You would find what we call awaiting trial victims. Awaiting trial victims. Usually, if you go into a prison, when after they've registered you outside and they let you into the big door, the place where you would enter, that is between the prison courtyard and the outside world. That place is like the reception of the prison. There's a board usually on your right in the prisons that I've visited. On that board, they will put, it's supposed to be like a manifest where they put the list of people or persons that are in custody. So they would put, you would be able to find maybe 15 persons are awaiting trial, 50 people have been convicted, 2 people on the death row, condemned, life sentence. I'm not sure if they put all of that, but I know that you would have the figure of the people that are awaiting trial actually on that board. You will have it. So if it's something you're interested in, you could go check it out for yourself. So we have awaiting trial inmates. Awaiting trial inmates are people who have not been to court or whose cases have not been determined. Maybe they've been going to court or they've had one court date, then they have an adjournment, and then they are awaiting trial. So as the name implies, they are awaiting the decision of the court on their matter. They are awaiting the adjudication of their case. So they are in prison. Usually it could be that they've been arraigned at the magistrate court, then remanded until the DPP's advice, that's the Director of Public Prosecution's advice. So usually some of them are remanded in those prisons until they on the order of the magistrate's order, of course, until the Director of Public Prosecution issues his legal advice, and the advice could be to charge them or not to charge them. So they would be in custody. Also, awaiting trial could be that they have had one court date, maybe they've been taken to court once or twice, or hearing has commenced and it's going on in their matter, or it's been mentioned, the trial has not opened, but the trial has definitely not been concluded in their case. So there has been no decision of the court whether to convict them or to acquit them. So they are called awaiting trial inmates. You find them in a Nigerian prison. Now, the peculiar situation with awaiting trial inmates sometimes is that many of them languish in jail for a long time, and unnecessarily so. It could be that they have no lawyer. Maybe the lawyer they employed was just a lawyer that was supposed to take their bail at the magistrate court, and then the lawyer could not take their bail, and then the lawyer will hands off. That's what the lawyer has been paid to do, and that engagement has ended. So it could be that they could not get another lawyer. It could be that maybe even their family members do not know that they've been transferred to so and so prison, or that so and so has happened to them. So they are just languishing in jail. There are some of them that it could be that the state, the prosecutor, has misplaced their file, or is not bringing their file to court each time they are supposed to appear before the court. And for some reason too, the prison officials, the correctional facility, I keep saying prison, in Nigeria they call it correctional facility now, but how much of correction is really being done, that's a subject for debate, and we're not debating here today. So just know that when I say prison, I mean correctional facility as well. So it could be also that the correctional facility has not been taking them to court on their adjourned dates or their adjournment dates. So if the matter was adjourned to 10th of June, for instance, and maybe the correctional facility refused to take them to court, or refused to listen for the next adjourned date for that particular prisoner. So on the next adjourned date, they take others, but they forget that, oh, this person is supposed to go. That's another issue. So they could be there for several reasons. Now, there's one other thing that I noticed when I was a prosecutor. It was that sometimes when we get to court, or maybe a case is coming up in court, it could even be that the person has been in custody for a long while, and then we'll get to court on that day, and or maybe when the file is handed to us, we will then trace it in the ministry, and we find out that legal advice is already out, and the advice is that the person should not be charged. In most cases, they don't know that the advice is out, and it is that they should not be charged. So they are just there languishing. So if they do not have a lawyer who would trace the case back to the ministry to see that it is that they should not be charged, or at least show up in court when we are in court, and we're able to tell the court that, oh, my lord, we've traced this file, it is that this person should not be charged, they will just be languishing there, thinking that, oh, something is happening, and nothing is happening with their case, because the state has no business with them. The state is not charging them. The advice is out. Now, you would ask me, what should be the proper process if the state is not charging? What's the process of contacting the suspect that, oh, we are not charging you, release this person. Also, when we get to court and we say, oh, advice is out, it is that this person should not be charged. In most cases, you would expect that maybe the court will make an order saying that this person should not be charged, they are released unconditionally. That is not the case. In most cases, the judge would then say that their lawyer should go to the ministry and get the copy of the advice and pay for it, because they're supposed to pay for it. It's like a token. When I was a prosecutor, it was like maybe 1,000 naira or max 2,000, but the fee that I remember was 1,000 naira. So they're supposed to pay a token. I hope I'm remembering that correctly, but I know it was a small amount of money. They're supposed to pay a token, get a certified true copy of that legal advice, and then take it to the prison or the correctional facility to secure the release of their client, of that inmate, of that person remanded in custody. But sometimes we find that the lawyers will ask the court to make a pronouncement that they are released unconditionally, so that if they have been brought to court, they can just go home that day. Or if they are in prison, the lawyer will just get the order of court and take it to the prison and secure their release. I don't know if maybe they used to take something from them in the prison or something, but lawyers would usually prefer the court to make that order rather than going to the ministry and then taking that legal advice to the prisons. But in most cases, you find that the lawyer would want that, the judge would not want to make the order. So that's one thing that I observed. So you may weigh into the matter in the comment section. So there are those kinds of people in jail. So it could be, really, we're not even talking about maybe this person did not do anything, they just arrested him and no, that's not even what we're talking about. We're talking about people that they are there now, they don't even know their fate, and nobody is representing them. So sometimes these people languish in jail. They languish in jail. There have been instances where maybe a lawyer will come up and try to secure the bail of someone that's been in custody for about 2 years. What was this person doing in custody? Or maybe even for a shorter period. No matter how short, wrongful incarceration is not a good thing to experience. So sometimes you find that the state has already said, we are not charging this person, we have no business with the person, but the person is still in custody, not released. And of course, then there are people who, the case has been adjourned. So, adjournments upon adjournments, it prolongs the time that they spend in custody. They are also called awaiting trial inmates. There are people that one time the prison, the correctional facility official told us in court, when they didn't bring somebody they were supposed to bring, and we came prepared for the matter, then he now told us, or maybe even told the court that day in court, that sometimes they call the names of those prisoners and they won't answer. On their court date, they will not answer. So I wouldn't know what the reason would be for that, and I wouldn't know why that would be happening, but that could also be a reason why someone is incarcerated, awaiting trial endlessly. It could be that they are deriving a benefit, we were also told, some of the underhand things that happen, which is not for this camera. Some people are also brought to court, but there's no legal representation for them. So each time they come, there's no lawyer. They are returned back to custody until there's a lawyer. Each time they come, there's no lawyer. They are returned back to custody until there's a lawyer. In Nigeria, there's no automatic process for getting a lawyer. I don't think there is anywhere in the world. You would find, I'm sure, if you venture into it, as many of these awaiting trial victims too have no lawyer, no legal representation. Some have even probably been forgotten by their family and their friends there. So they're just there. Nothing is happening. If something is happening, it's different. There are some that nothing is happening on their case. They're just there. So if you have an organization that is interested in representing victims, you can go to the prison and, speak to the warders. I wouldn't know the politics of that, but you can also approach them and find out for yourself, to represent awaiting trial victims who are unrepresented. When I was a prosecutor, in one of my courts, our primary court, the judge would sometimes tell me, write to the Legal Aid Council, asking them to provide this person with legal representation against the next adjourned date. And I would do that. I would write. And then usually the legal aid, because at that time, legal aid was also situated within the secretariat. So they were at the back of our ministry. So I would write, I'll take the letter there, and they would send somebody. So that's also an option. Another option is NGOs. So if you're interested, or if you're a pro bono lawyer, if you're a lawyer looking for pro bono, you can go to the prison and just ask for awaiting trial victims who are unrepresented. So those are some of the reasons why there are so many awaiting trial. Victims incarcerated in Nigerian prisons. And of course, court adjournments too is another thing. It could be that the case is actually progressing, like it's happening, but it's not happening fast enough. Typically, when you get to court, a lot of things can happen. You can be prepared as a prosecutor, and defense will not show up, and the prisoner will show up. Apologies for that word prisoner. It's not derogatory in this sense. It's just to describe the state of existence at that particular time, not to describe, not to qualify their person or identify, or to say that that's their identity, please. So the prisoner might be in court, their lawyer may not come. And in most cases, these people don't even know the names of their lawyers. So sometimes when the court is saying who is their lawyer, maybe the court would want to ask the prosecutor to at least maybe call the lawyer, or even the registrar to call the lawyer to find out if that's an actual lawyer and if they were there at the last time and why they are not here today. Most of these people don't know their lawyers. They'll just say maybe lawyer Ade, or maybe they'll just try to describe the lawyer. Oh, the lawyer is like this, like this. Sometimes they don't know their lawyers, or they say, it's lawyer Shade. So who is lawyer Shade? Nobody knows lawyer Shade. In court, you go by your last name mostly. But in most cases, these people know the first name, or maybe a description of the lawyer, or maybe just one name, even if it's the last name, which might not be. If you say lawyer Ajala or lawyer Adewale now in a Yoruba state, there could be 10 Ajalas or 10 Adewales frequenting that court or in that jurisdiction. Which one does the court contact for you? So that's also a problem with awaiting trial victims. So it could be that the prosecutor didn't come and the defense came and the prisoner came. So they have to go back, having done nothing. It could be also that the wardens or the correctional facility officers, the warders, did not bring the defendants. And then the lawyer is here expecting them to bring his client. They did not bring. The prosecutor is here expecting to continue the matter. It could be that even all those three parties are here and their witnesses are not there for one reason or the other. So adjournments upon adjournments. I remember when we were doing praise and worship in Kirikiri that day, the person that was leading was saying, they were singing one song, march for grand, march Satan for grand. So the lady was like, march adjournments, march sentence. So I found it curious, in Kotoba and Domoluman, that's how you people say that what is paining the child, that's what the child will be emphasizing. If a child wants biscuit now, the child is crying, be like, biscuit. That was paining him at that time. So they were like, march adjournment, march sentence. So adjournment is also one of the reasons why awaiting trial victims languish in custody. So that's another reason. So who are the people you find in Nigerian prison? We talked about awaiting trial inmates. That's their fate has not been decided, but they are being held at the pleasure of the state, really, until the court has decided something about them. And in some cases, the state has already decided. They just don't know, or they are not represented, so nobody to protect their interests. Now, that's one. I wish and I hope that someday in Nigeria, even if it's not something that is practiced in the world, I wish and hope that someday in Nigeria, maybe people, persons, or families, we have like a standby lawyer family or lawyer person relationship, such that if someone is even arrested, they know they are not the number of their lawyer, they know the lawyer to call. But the question would be also, these law enforcement people, do they avail these people of the opportunity to contact a lawyer? That's another discussion for another day. But it's good. It would be good if everybody or every family has a standby lawyer, or a person has a standby lawyer. So if anything happens to you, I was listening to an activist the other day, and he said that he mentioned the name of one human rights activist in Nigeria, and he said that the person has been his lawyer since his student government activism days. So if anything happens to him at any time, because he's often arrested, the lawyers are on standby. They'll be the ones to raise an alarm. They'll be the ones to file for his the enforcement of his fundamental rights, to defend him. So to an extent, he's protected, because it's not just there without anyone looking out for his interests legally or law-wise or court-wise. So awaiting trial victims. The second type of persons that you find in Nigerian prison are convicted inmates. Convicted inmates are people whose fate has been decided. So they've been awarded a term, a sentence, maybe 15 years imprisonment with the option of a fine, 15 years imprisonment with hard labor, or 15 years imprisonment. People whose fate has been decided by the court and they are now serving their term in jail. Those are the people we call convicted inmates. When I'm talking about prison, I'm talking about standard prisons like maximum or minimum prisons, not police cell. No, police cell is different, and those ones are even for temporary incarceration. Now, when we went to Kano, I remember that I spoke with an inmate that was arrested for aimless wandering. There's a name he called it, or there's a name that was on his. They provided us with a charge sheet, or was it an arrest, or the judgment sheet, something, and it was written in Hausa, but they interpreted it as aimless wandering, something Banza. That's what he was arrested for. So, and then he was to be in prison for I think 6 months or 1 year with the option of a fine, but he had no want or no means to pay the fine. That's why he was there. So we were there to pay the fines for people. Our law clinic actually was there to pay the fines for people that had been convicted and sentenced with the option of a fine, or people whose sentence was to pay a fine and they were in custody because they could not pay that fine. And then we were there to provide general legal advice to all inmates. So some people are in custody. Yes, they've been convicted and they've been sentenced. We did a video on judgment where we talked about conviction and sentencing. There's another video on allocutors, which is how you can lessen your sentence. If possible, please watch those videos. Just look at the criminal prosecution section of the channel. So there are people like that, but they are unable to pay the fine, so they will serve the sentence. So if you're an NGO too, or if you're interested in things like that, you could go and pay the fines for those prisoners. The prison wardens or wardens or officials will be able to give you a list of the names and of people that they think qualify, especially people that are of good conduct and of sober behavior in custody. They may even allow you to interview them, to find out why they're there, what they've learned, what they hope to do when they're out, and why they haven't paid their fines, so that you may even be able to determine if they're worthy of, that is if you have a limited budget, of course. So if you have a budget for it, you can go and pay fines. There are people that are there, they've been sentenced, but they also have the option of a fine, but nobody to pay the fine. So if they pay the fine, they can come out. So you can pay their fines. So we have such people in custody. And we have people that are just serving out their sentence, some with hard labor, some without hard labor. So they are serving out their sentence. You find those people in custody. The other set of people you find are lifers. Those are people that have been sentenced to imprisonment for life. They have no hope of coming out because they have to serve that term as long as they are alive. Such people, the only hope they have is the hope of a state pardon, which is something they could get based on good behavior, sober conduct, and probably community service even within the prison. So there are several, criteria for that. There's a Department of Ministries of Justice that handle that, to create the list, decide those who are deserving, and then the government goes, meets them, and makes a pronouncement, pardons them. It happens October 1st in Nigeria. And there are people that can also be pardoned outside of October 1st. We recently heard that a governor pardoned a man that had been in custody for about 14 years, sentenced to life, or was it to death, for a certain offense that was deemed to not warrant that kind of sentencing. And he had spent about 14 years out of it. So he was released by executive pardon. So that is also something. So there are people who are serving their life imprisonment sentence in custody. You will find them in a Nigerian prison. And lastly, we have condemned inmates who are awaiting execution. Those are inmates that have been sentenced to death. They are awaiting execution. So they are usually what we call people that are on the death row. You would find them also in a Nigerian prison. They are on the death row. So those kind of people, the court has sentenced them to death. So their fate has been decided. Now they are awaiting the execution of that fate. Now many of them languish in Nigerian prisons because governors have taken to the habit or the fad of not signing death warrants. I read a report about 2-3 years ago where the report had said that there was a dearth of hangmen in Nigeria currently, in the Nigerian prison system currently. So maybe people are no longer doing that job or taking to that profession. There were so many people on the death row awaiting, their execution, but there were no hangmen to hang them. Some were sentenced to death by lethal injection. I recall a judgment that we received a few years ago when I was a prosecutor, and it was a murder case, and the court sentenced the man to death by lethal injection. So that one does not need an hangman. Some are sentenced to death by electric chair, maybe electrocution. I don't know if that is operative in Nigeria. The only two I'm familiar with in Nigeria are by hanging and by lethal injection. By firing squad is no longer a fad. It's no longer, I don't think I've seen it in any recent judgment. But it used to be, back in the day, they used to sentence people to death by firing squad. So there are so many means of executing the death warrant or death judgment, but those are the usual ones, by lethal injection or by hanging. But there are so many people, according to the report that I read, who are on the death row, but the governor has not signed their death warrant. So essentially the court has pronounced that they should be executed, but the governor has to sign the death warrant so that it can actually be implemented. So many governors are no longer doing that. Those people are just there. Their fate is hanging in the balance. So those are the 4 categories of people, or inmates. Not just people, because officials are there, workers, maybe doctors, chaplains, and all of that, cleaners and whatnot. But those are the 4 types of inmates that you'll find in a Nigerian prison. I hope you learned something in this video. Leave comments in the comment section and let's continue the conversation. I will see you in my very next video. Toodles.